here. Hello, Dan
Hello.
Houk. How are you?
I am doing great. Had a great weekend last weekend. I was just telling you, I went zip lining with Teresa, who has a fear of heights, and my daughter, and we're up in the canopy in the redwoods over in Sonoma, and it was so fun.
The struggle's real with
It's
those
tough.
who don't like heights.
They said to go outside because of COVID, so we did it. Right? We
Awesome.
did.
That's great. So last time I went was 2018, and it was in Kauai, right down the middle where they filmed the Stampede of Dinosaurs with Jurassic Park, the first one. And it was,
Oh wow, that'd be cool.
I loved every minute of it, and I didn't care about the heights. It was just so beautiful, just like the redwoods. Gosh,
Yeah, there's something about that.
Yeah, God has made this place spectacular. Oops, boy, I got to turn some of this stuff on. We're hoping everybody's doing well. Gosh, a lot of things are going on. If you're like me, probably the COVID world's coming in on you, man. I know a lot of people that have it. Gosh, a bunch of musician friends, friends of that work with my daughter. We actually know a couple of people at work, and so I would say this: if you get it, you're going to get over it 99.99%. However, boy, wear your mask, wash your hands. It's amazing how that is. But I know we've all got our opinion on it. But I just found that, man, I think a little bit of caution warrants our consideration for sure. But Dan Houk,
there's people on both sides, right?
Yeah.
So it's good to. I like to play it safe myself.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Gosh, I can tell you this: Bayside Granite Bay.
Mm-hmm.
We had the biggest service we've had since COVID, and we had outside under the tent, and it was a spectacular weekend in terms of weather. But seeing Ray there talking to his people, and it was a couple hundred people a service, it was amazing. It felt like when we started attending Bayside 20 some odd years ago with the kids, and the kids were like, 7 and 9 or something like that. It was pretty spectacular. And, you hear a lot of things about what the church is and what it should be doing. The fact is that no matter what stand you take, you're going to catch it. Right.
That's for sure.
And so we just know that we're trying to do the God honoring thing, trying to keep people safe, but also trying to feed our people. So if you guys are interested, you got to go ahead and reserve a ticket. But I think it's going to be somewhere around 800 people are going to be able to get in. And it was awesome. Live worship. Everybody behaved themselves. Gosh, it was amazing.
That's so good.
So tell us now, you guys are doing a big outdoor thing.
We are. I'm just going to shout out a few people, though. I see Tracy Baker, Kevin Yerby, Pamela Gemming, Amy Marie, and Randy. Good to see you all.
Hey, Randy.
But yeah, hey, we got we kind of had the outdoor service idea before everybody else, and really was our best option at the time. We have this huge field, and we built a stage, and so we've been having services now for a month outside. There's circles on the lawn, so you can go. So we call them crop circles. The UFO dropped them off. And, but you can sit in a circle with your family, and you're 6 feet from everybody else. So it couldn't be a better setup. And the sound has been good. So everything has been really good for that service, enjoyable. And this kind of spirit, it's almost like going to family camp in the summer where you're having church, outside. And so it's been a really cool experience. Hey, Lisa, good to see you. Glad you're here. Carl Snyder from the East Coast checking in.
It's past your bedtime, young man. Down in front.
He probably had a little too much Pete's coffee, and so now he's up. So,
well, I quit coffee 10 years ago. I haven't missed it one bit. Everybody says, "How can you do that?" I said, well, I don't know. I just, one of those things. But we're super glad you guys are here. We're super glad Dan's back with us. Dan Crystal is on vacation, and that's a good thing for him. He's a good man, and he loves you guys, but he needed to get away. So I think he's in Oregon. Is that right? Or Washington? But
Yeah, wherever he is, there's water nearby. That's all I know.
yeah. And he always has that smile. That guy's one of the happiest persons I know. So
He is super happy.
Before we get started, let's go ahead and pray, and let's bring God here. We need him desperately, so let's take it to him. Heavenly Father, God, thank you for this ministry, God. Thank you for everyone who's here tonight, God, and then all the people that are chiming in later, God, and watching it at their leisure, which is a great thing, God. So, Father, we invite you here. Have your way with our hearts, God, with our words, with the discussions, God. Father, we lay everything at the cross tonight, God. We come seeking you to become closer to you, God, to become more like you. And you're amazing, God. Father, please bless everybody, God, and just allow the word to spread, God. Some really great discussions are happening here, God. It's very accessible, and keep that going, God. Keep us out of your way. And Father, I lift up my brother Dan Houk to you, God, and just speak through him as you always do, God. Thank you for your love and your mercy and your grace. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Dan, what do you have for us tonight? Yeah.
Well, we are talking about three kinds of friends, and last week we spent a little time, for those of you who weren't here, spent a little time talking about being that friend who's the giver. So the person really whose role is, you could call it a mentor or a coach, but whose role is really to pour into somebody. And it is a friendship, but it's definitely more of a one-way friendship. So sometimes you get something out of it just because it feels good to help people, right? But the point is, you want to understand that that's the role in the friendship. And so once you're done pouring into somebody, or once you've accomplished whatever the goal is of that relationship, sometimes you move on, or the relationship change, and maybe can come more of a balancer type friendship. And so that's an important friendship to have in your life. And I kind of challenged you guys last week to, if you're not doing it, really to find a place where you can take that role in somebody's life. And it may be that there's something you've gone through that you can help somebody else through. It could be that you're gifted in a certain area. You might be a musician or a business person, or maybe you've just been walking with Christ for a long time and you could help somebody else who's newer. So there's a lot of different roles you can play as a giver. The second one was receiver. And that's really the relationship where you're being fed, you're being filled up, and somebody's pouring into you in an area where you need, and they are ahead of you. So, and we talked about, it takes a little bit of humility, takes commitment, takes trust to have those kinds of relationships. But you also want those in your life. And if you got a window where you're not receiving from somebody, it's really good to find somebody that you can receive from and look at areas where you want to grow in. Because that's how we grow, right? I heard somebody say that I never want to play tennis with somebody worse than me. I always want to play tennis with somebody better than me, because that's how you get better. So being a receiver really helps you grow as a person. So the last one, and the reason we kind of wanted to spend 1 week talking about it, is the balancer friendship. And that's the more equal peer type of friendship. And the reality is those friendships are usually the longest lasting, the deepest, the most transformational in our lives. And also the biggest hassles, the biggest problems, the most pain we experience often is from those kinds of friendships.
Sure. Yeah.
So we'll spend a little bit of time talking about it tonight. I think I read a verse at the end of last week's session out of John, and Jesus was talking about the disciples and calling them friends. So it's really interesting that I heard Tim Keller talking about friendship, and this is like profound. He said that, a lot of the problems we have in our life are related to our sin. Okay, so if I'm selfish in a friendship, if I'm not trustworthy, or if I'm if I share secrets, a lot of different things that I might do in a friendship can really hurt that friendship. But there's one problem that I might have that has nothing to do with sin, and that is loneliness. Loneliness is actually the one thing that is a result of being created in the image of God. It's weird to think about, but being lonely actually goes against what God wants for us. And in Genesis, it said he created Adam, right? Adam was in the garden, and Adam had a relationship with God. So you'd think Adam would have everything he needed. But God said, it's not good for the man to be alone. I'll make a helper suitable for him. So God established a friendship with Adam. But then Adam realized, and God helped him experience the reality that loneliness is a result of not being completely connected relationally in the way you should. And so friendship really is at the heart of God. Friendship is kind of unique to Christianity in a lot of ways, because there's a lot of religions in the world that teach a lot of things. If you're Buddhist, you get wisdom, right, from Buddha or Confucius or whatever. But in Christianity, what you get is a person. You get Jesus. You get a relationship. So friendship is at the heart of God. And so friendships are critical. Friendships are important for growth. Friendships are also trouble. So I would just love to see, let me read the verse first, and then I'm going to ask you guys a question, okay? So the verse is John 15:12-15. It says, my command is this, love each other as I have loved you. Greater love has no man than this, that he lays one's life down for his friends. You are my friends if you do what I command. I no longer call you servants, because a servant doesn't know his master's business. Instead, I've called you friends, for everything I've learned from my Father I have made known to you. So he lays out an expectation, right? You're my friends if. So I would love to see in the comment section some of the expectations you think are reasonable to have in a friendship. So go ahead and go type those in there. I'd love to see some of those. I know with all you guys online, there's a lot of wisdom that you have. And what about you, Dave? What do you think is a good expectation to have for a friendship?
You know what my number one thing is? Honesty.
Yeah.
Is just honesty, man. I live long enough now to really appreciate that person that doesn't tell me what they think I want to hear. They tell me they love me enough to tell me what I need to hear.
Yeah.
And that's
true.
That's a rare one, man. And I find it's a little bit more rare in the church because I think what happens is we're as we should be. We are really concerned with feelings, and not that that you shouldn't be. But again, it's like raising your kids in a sense, in that you love them enough to be honest with them. Say, look, you need to change your ways, dude. And it's happened. Listen, and some really tough lessons once in a while, but it's you value that so much.
So true. It's funny, you think about Christians, and I think one of the things Christians have a value for is being nice, right? Being nice to people. That's one of the reasons why church parking lots are the last parking lots to empty, because everybody's waiting for everybody else and being nice, right? So being honest. Yeah, what is up with that?
No, what church is that? I've never seen that.
No, maybe not Bayside, but but it's true. I think honesty. I'm seeing some of these others. Compassion. That's so good. Respect, reliability, acceptance. Really good. Authenticity. Randy said.
That's good.
So true. Yeah, like bringing your true self to the relationship.
Yeah.
Someone who will listen. That's good, Terry. A balanced friendship. Let me see. Not just one person always calling or initiating. Yeah. So you want some balance, some equity, right? So that I'm not always the one calling.
Yeah.
So spending time together, hard to do. Correct. Real tough when you're in your house to.
Someone that will actually listen.
Yeah. We've heard a little bit about that lately, haven't we? Listening.
Yeah. Yes.
And it's so important in a friendship. And so those are great. Those all help, and I think they are a part of a friendship that you should have an expectation of.
Yeah.
It's usually when those things are lacking or somebody violates something that your friendship starts to have problems. And so it's really interesting that Jesus, in that verse I read, one of the things that's kind of an earmark of friendship, and I didn't see the word here, but I think it's really true, is secrets. So not that you're keeping them, but that you actually divulge them. Jesus said to his disciples that I call you friends because I have shared everything the Father has told me I have shared with you, right? And so I think sharing secrets or sharing who you really are inside, like you said, honesty, Dave, but sometimes you want to hear honesty, but sometimes you need to give honesty. And so this is who my messed up self is, right?
Right.
But I think as friendships are growing, you don't bring the dump truck and just dump it on somebody the first week you know them, right? You ease them into the swamp. you let them walk in slowly to see who you really are.
Yeah, no regurgitation.
Yes, that's right. We've all probably had that person where we're getting to know them and we're sitting across having coffee or something, and you know everything about them and you don't even know how to process it all, right? So it's nice to kind of let that friendship grow. And Jesus did it over 3 years. But by the time those 3 years were done, what he said was true, right? Everything the Father has given me, I have given you. That's a pretty incredible thing a statement to make. So everything they possibly could need to know had been communicated to them. And that's why we have the Bible too, because they recorded a lot of that, right? They remembered what he said and what he did. And so they wrote that all out. So secrets may sound weird, but secrets are kind of a hallmark of a friendship, that secrets are given both ways and that they're guarded and they're kept secret. So we'll talk a little more about secrets in a minute, but there's two basic kinds of friendship when it comes to balancer. There's the same-sex friendships. Jesus had his group of 12, and in that group he had 3, right? Peter, James, John, kind of his tight inner circle. And there's a really interesting verse in John 19. Now, think about this for a minute. This is mind-blowing. But Jesus is on the cross, so he's up there in pain and agony, suffering, and he's looking down and he sees his mom down there. And it says when Jesus saw his mother there and the disciple who he loved standing by him, which was John, he said to her, "Woman, here's your son." And he said to the disciple, "Here is your mother." And from that time on, this disciple took her into his home. Think about that for a minute. I mean, I got questions. Like, Jesus had brothers and sisters. What was that all about? Yeah. So when Mary left, she didn't go home to the brothers and sisters, Jesus' biological brothers and sisters? No. He picked John, his friend, to care for his mom. And so I think, that kind of shows how deep and how powerful a friendship can be, that you trust them more than your own family members, So that's Jesus on friendships. Like, he pursued friendships, he poured into his friendships, and then he trusted people in his friendships with very important things. He trusted them with the gospel message. Yeah, and he trusted them with his own mom. And so that sharing of secrets and that trust is it's kind of like the glue that holds our friendships together. Yeah. So here's some of the value of same-sex friendships. Well, why don't you guys write it down? I want to hear some of your thoughts too. But same-sex friendships do have a lot of value, and I usually like to tell people, hey, if you're wanting to date and if you're a guy, you don't have guy friends, or if you're a woman, you don't have that many girlfriends. Before I would ever even consider starting dating, you need to get some same-sex friends. You just do. Yeah. I think the tendency is sometimes if people move into a new area or something, they may want to, and they want to date, they go and do it, but don't shortcut those same-sex friendships, because they have some pretty huge benefits that opposite sex friendships can have. So I remember when I was in the singles ministry, and Teresa, my wife, Teresa, was in it with me, and we were single at the time. And it was so cool to see, the ladies could kind of go off together and talk, among themselves, and they could encourage each other in ways that I couldn't as a guy, right? And when it came to same-sex friendships, you don't have to worry about dating, right? You don't have to worry about the kind of the awkwardness of, if your friend starts becoming a little closer than, you thought. At least it's not supposed to be that way. So, and then you can also, you can hang out with your friends in your sweatpants, right? Same-sex friends don't care usually how you look as much. They kind of accept you where you are. You don't have to get makeup on. And but there's also gender-related topics, right? So there's certain things that we talk about with guys that I would talk about with guys I would never talk about with women. And I think it should be the same with women. So it also promotes accountability. So if you got a same-sex friend, they can kind of say, hey, dude, that's not cool. What you're doing is not right. They might see how you're interacting with the opposite sex, or just how you're living your life. And it's a lot easier for a guy to call a guy to account, I think, or a woman to call a woman to account.
I think that's one of the biggest things is accountability with our friends.
Yeah.
And exactly say, if you guys, if you don't have that person in your life, man, you're really missing out. And it's not to bring you down. It's not to put you in a fog and to demean you. It's just to help. I don't know about you guys, but I need that accountability because I know what's up here. And sometimes I'm a mess. I'll just, full disclosure, like everybody else, we go through life and there's times where my walk is what I think is pretty strong, and there's times where, man, I just need some help and I need somebody to call me out on that.
True.
And I think it comes down to maturity, though. I think a mature person wants to have that feedback, and yeah, it's tough sometimes, but it's really a big factor in that in those friendships. You guys, you got to have it in your life. That's what about you, Dan?
Yeah, it's funny. You as you were talking, I was remembering an accountability group I was in with a group of. It was a men's group, right? It was a small group, but we would get together on Fridays, and it was at Bayside. And so we'd go through the curriculum, whatever we were studying, but at the end, we had 11 questions we would answer. And we would go around the room, around the table, and the questions were, some of them were like this. Have you read your Bible every day this week? Have you had your devotion? Have you spent time with the Lord this week? And have you prayed? So kind of two questions. Have you been above board in all your dealings, like all your business dealings? Another one was, have you looked at a woman inappropriately this week, or looked at images online, whatever? So we were getting into each other's business a little bit, right?
Into business,
and it was really interesting because we noticed, like I didn't notice this till our group leader said this, but every week it would be, I did pretty good this week. I did like 3 out of 5 days. And in one guy, I drove by the gym and there was a woman that was walking outside the gym, and so, but it was so interesting that everybody would kind of soften their answers a little bit. And I remember one week the group leader said, this week, let's do it a little different. When you answer the accountability questions, just say yes or no. Have you been honest in your business dealings? No. Have you read your Bible every day? No. Have you looked at a woman inappropriately? Yes. Hey, it was so convicting to our group because we actually were becoming accountable. At that point, we were realizing, okay, you know what? We're playing games when we say 3 out of 5 days. Okay, we didn't do it. That's the bottom line. The question is, have you done it every day? And I remember really growing that week and saying, to myself, because of that, I don't want to compromise. Like, I don't want to say I'm doing something when I'm really not doing it. And it was hugely helpful in my life. So Accountability is key. Gwen says a true girlfriend will keep confidential things confidential. So important.
Yeah.
That's why we say in small groups, like if you're being accountable to each other, it stays in the group, right? It's not for anybody else to ever hear. And so that's huge, is keeping those secrets secret.
Yeah.
So accountability is huge. And it really, I think it helps you with growth. It really promotes stability in your life. So if you have opposite sex friendships all the time, if they turn into dating relationships, they can be on again, off again. You got some steady guy friends in your life or girlfriends in your life, it really promotes a lot more stability for you. So Jesus not only though had those same sex friends, he had opposite sex friends. He was single, and he had women in his life that spent a lot of time with him. In fact, they supported him. There were some women, actually one of them was from Herod's household. Her name was, I forget. Anyway, she was under some weird name, but she was married to the guy that took care of King Herod's household. She had money. She was an important person. And I think that in Jesus' life, he didn't look at women as a problem or a hindrance or anything. He valued women. He lifted women up. And the women supported him, and it was sure to be put in the Bible. You know, whatever's in the scripture, God wanted in it, right? And so it's in there that Jesus had these women friends that helped him and hung out with him. But he mentioned some of them by name. Mary Magdalene and is one of them. She had 7 demons. Mary and Martha, Lazarus' sisters, were 2 very close friends with Jesus. And so he valued those friendships. And so you can learn a lot about opposite sex friendships too that you can't learn in the same sex friendship. And I think, personally, I think that's one of the powers of the singles ministry at Bayside, is you got a safe place. You can hang out with other people, singles, opposite sex, same and opposite sex, and you can kind of just do life together. I see a lot of you guys, you go out around in groups, you go out public, you go to dinner together, and there's a mix, right? That is so healthy, because you really get a chance to see other guys interacting with other women and women interacting with men, and you get a female perspective if you're a guy and vice versa if you're a girl. I think that those things are so helpful, even if you're like a single mom. Like Teresa, when she was a single mom, we have a very close friend, Mitch, who she would call over the house to kill spiders, really important jobs like that. But Mitch was one of those guys who's just a good friend, and he treated her like a friend. And we're still close friends, and Teresa and Mitch are still close friends to this day.
Yeah. So Lori Bennett says, I think it's hard to have, when you have opposite sex friends, when you get a boyfriend or girlfriend, then I think it's hard to accept the friendship that your significant other has with someone with the opposite sex. So let me say a word on that. Red flag. If you're in that relationship, if you're in an opposite sex relationship and it's appropriate, which obviously that's great. And there's ways, if you guys want to talk about that at some point, to keep that appropriate and what we do even at the church to make sure that those friendships. But if you're dating somebody who's jealous of your friendships, any of your friendships, same sex or opposite sex, that's a red flag. And don't let those people control you, because it happens all the time that I have people in the office we're talking about saying, well, then they're having a problem with trust. And listen, and we've all been there, right? We've got the jealousy thing, but maybe you're not with the person that's equally yoked, or that is a person that you should be with, because I'm telling you, I have some great opposite sex friends. The singer in my current band, it's a great friend of mine. Mm-hmm. And I'm married, right? But so we treat it very respectfully for both ends, and we could talk about that later. But the fact is, if that's the case, then there's probably going to be some problems further down the line if you get a boyfriend or girlfriend. That's you know, and it's I wouldn't say it's a game breaker, but it's significant.
Yeah, that one's kind of a little tricky, because I think there's, you make generalizations. So I think the generalization would be, if you have a good opposite sex friend, you shouldn't have to give up a friendship because you have a dating relationship with somebody else, right? There's so many things that could happen, though. There's so many things that could be going on. There's levels of health that we have, boundaries. Even like when you're dating somebody, there's probably some things that you'll do differently with your opposite sex friends.
Sure.
Like you might not go out to movies with this other opposite sex friends when you're dating somebody else, or alone, right? Or go to their house alone. So you might change things, but you definitely wouldn't want to give up friendships that you have. And so I still have a lot of opposite sex friendships that I developed in singles ministry, and Teresa's same with men that she developed. But we have different boundaries. For sure, you have to look at those.
Yeah.
But you want to be careful about, I'm dating now, so all my women friends are gone for the next 6 months until we break up, and then I get to see you again. You don't want to do those kinds of things. And here's another thing about opposite sex friends that makes it easier is when you're doing things in groups, it does become much easier to not worry about the boundaries as much, because you're out in public together, you're doing things together. There's really no boundary issues, right? Nothing you have to hide. So it's when you're alone, you really have to start thinking about, okay, how are we doing this so that we're being respectful and not having any appearance of impropriety. So that's something that's helpful to have, opposite sex friendships. They are a little more nuanced, but they can be very powerful as well. Here's the other thing about an opposite sex friendship that is just a reality. They can turn into dating and relationships or even marriage. Right?
Oh, yeah.
So ideally, that's what you want. You want a good friendship with somebody of the opposite sex that really turns into something more.
Yeah.
That's the healthiest way to progress to a marriage. So we kind of haven't talked about balanced yet, but really these friendships that we have should have a general flow back and forth. Somebody mentioned earlier, one person's not always calling. I would just say, if there's an understanding that one person's always doing the calling and the other person's bad at it, but there still seems this back and forth interaction in a relationship, those are things you can work out in your friendship or talk about in your friendship. And when you're irritated about things, it's good to talk about those things in a friendship, right?
Yeah.
So that's how you grow, and you get to know each other better, and you see what irritates each other and what helps each other.
Yeah.
So
and it's happened in my life where, the reciprocation thing's big, man, because it's like a respect thing. So I just know in life right now. So before we had these things in our lives,
yeah,
but now, whenever I'm around my friends, you go to dinner. You see a couple on date night and they don't talk for 10 minutes because they're on their phone, right? So we're always around our phone.
Yeah.
So you know that if they're not returning your phone call or text, it's probably so. But I've definitely had those friendships where it's been tough. So that reciprocation thing is big. So and some people aren't good at it, but listen, if you're going to be somebody's friend, get good at returning phone calls.
Yeah, seriously, it's a relationship. You relate, right? So I think you have to, friendships tend to kind of end up, the depth of them end up to the level of where you take them or where you allow them. So if the friendship is kind of one-sided, up here, it'll probably settle out up here, not as deep. But if the friendship it feels one-sided, but you have a conversation, you talk it out, it can deepen and it can keep going like that. So I think it's healthy when you're looking at friendships and having a balanced friendship. The word we used last week was intentional, right? That's the book that's coming out, Intentional Relationships. Is you want to be thinking about your friendships. You want to kind of analyze them a little bit and say, how am I doing as a friend? And what do I want out of this friendship? What do I want from my friend? Have the hard conversations. Sometimes they're hard to start, but sometimes we fear having conversations with people that we don't need to fear. And when we have them, we realize, oh my gosh, I wish I'd done this earlier, because now we understand each other better. They understand that I have an expectation that you should call me every once in a while, and or that you never ask me questions, Dave, and I expect you to ask me questions about my life, even though he does. But so a balanced friendship is going to look like that. It's going to have that nice, steady flow back and forth.
So let me ask you a question then, and I bet you this is already on somebody's mind. So when do you know I'm out? Is there, with a friendship? Because I mean, it should be a reciprocal thing. And
right.
Sometimes it's not, and sometimes it's not healthy. So are there any signs we should be looking for? And
yeah, I think that if we're being intentional, right? There's a very well-known proverb, Proverbs 27:17, that says, "As iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another," or woman, right? So what that's saying is there's a relationship going on, and what's happening in the relationship is both people are actually getting better. Both people are actually helping each other.
Yeah.
And it's not to say that, sometimes we go out with the friendships and we need to laugh, right? And we have different friendships that have different personalities, just like we do. Yeah. But the reality is, at some point, you have to ask yourself, is this friendship moving me forward, taking me back, bringing me back? I think that, and if you don't feel like it's bringing you forward, then you kind of need to either have the conversation about it, or you have to go back and say, you don't maybe not even need to say it to them, but you might need to kind of step back and say, I'm going to move this relationship to a little more surface than it is right now. Yeah. We have friendships all the time. We don't realize why they're there. They just kind of happened, like workmates. I've had people I've worked with, I felt so close to, and then I got a new job and we talked a little, and then pretty soon it disappeared.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, that's interesting. That was a true work friendship. We felt really close. We loved each other. At the time we were working together, but it really didn't have the staying power. And I've had other friendships where I've left kind of thinking the same thing, close, and they just lasted. I've got friendships from Southern California where I talk pretty much every week. And I love these people. They love me, and we seek each other out. So that friendship, even though proximity isn't there and it's harder, it's going to go on. I can tell already it's going to go on. So there's this balance. There's this back and forth that's continuing to go. Yeah, Terry says, when you're always uncomfortable or dreading your time with them, it's time to back out. Yeah. I would agree with you.
Yep.
A friendship should be fun. A friendship should be fulfilling.
Going, oh no, what's it going to be about now? Oh
yeah. If you see their name on your phone and you roll your eyes, and, oh my gosh, no, I just can't take it.
Oh gosh, should I pick up?
It's time to have the define the relationship conversation. So sometimes relationships end though because the balanced friendship changes. Sometimes two people are going forward and one person kind of really keeps growing and one person really doesn't. They either stop or they stand still. And after a while, you realize I've become a giver to this person. We just don't see eye to eye anymore. So there's a lot of different reasons, but I'd say the bottom line is if you don't feel like this friendship is moving you forward, if it's not meaningful to you, then you just need to either talk to the person about it, or you need to evaluate where you need to put this friendship. It becomes an acquaintance or
exactly. And I just wrote that down to bring it up. It's like there is a difference between friendship and acquaintances.
Yes,
and
totally.
And a friendship is that person that is a reciprocation of your time and your feelings and your heart, right? An acquaintance is somebody you might see on a Thursday night. How you doing? Good to see you. And that's it. And that's just a friend. So I think sometimes when we get our feelings hurt with that friendship that's not going well, it's because maybe we put unrealistic expectations on that person. And I'm one of those people. My wife, she says, listen, why are you getting hacked off? Because what's your expectation?
Yeah. I know. What did you expect?
Exactly. Well, and so well, your relationship is a different place to you than it is to them. And that's okay. Because if you've never talked about it, well, I've given so much. Well, did you ever talk to them about it? See, are we cool or what? Well, maybe you're not. No, I don't know you. It's okay.
Yeah, there's an interesting proverb that most people have heard because it's usually misquoted or it's taken out of context. In fact, I heard a very well-known apologist who's on the TV and everything totally taken out of context. And the verse says this: "As a man thinks in his heart, so is he." Have you ever heard that?
Yeah.
Okay, so now it sounds kind of inspirational because you're thinking, oh yeah, I can do anything. I just need to think and then be whatever it is that is I'm thinking. But the reality is that is part of a bigger proverb that says, don't accept food from a miser, because you will waste your pleasant words and you will vomit up what he's given you. As a man thinks in his heart, so is he. That's so what that verse is talking about is friendship. Real versus phony. And the reality is, the warning is, don't get into a relationship for the benefits. Get into a relationship for the person, right? Because whatever's going on inside of somebody is going to come out at some point. Yeah. And if you think you're benefiting from the friendship, you're getting something out of it, and it's not real, it can sting. It can hurt. And so I think, especially when it comes to opposite sex friendships, it happens with all of them, but with opposite sex friendships, and dating is a type of friendship, right? I see it all the time where somebody gets into a relationship because they think the girl is hot or the guy is cool or the whatever, all these different temperatures. But people get into a relationship because, and if they were being honest, because of something they think they can get out of it. There's a great verse in Judges and Samson that tell me if this has ever happened to you, because true confessions, this has happened to me. This has been my approach to dating in the past. Samson went down to Timnah and saw there a young Philistine woman. When he returned, he said to his father and mother, I have seen a Philistine woman in Timnah. Now get her for me as my wife. What was his criteria for choosing this woman to be his best friend and his wife? I'll give you a couple guesses, but I'm pretty sure we all know, right? There was something about her that he liked, that he thought would be good for him. And so he went after her. And sadly, I think a lot of dating relationships, that's how they start. And, it's really sad, because if that's what you're looking for, that's what you're going to get. It's really interesting. I have found when I'm with somebody, whether guy or girl, if you really start getting to know somebody and they're just incredible people, they just have a beauty to them.
Oh, yeah.
They just do, right? They can look weird at first, but if you start talking to them and they're just the coolest person on earth, after a while, you don't even see what they look like. They just are beautiful, And I know there's more to it than that when it comes to dating, but I think people need to be way more intentional about building those friendships, especially if it's a dating friendship. It will shoot you in the foot every time if you're basing it on what you think you can get out of it, right? So we got some cool comments here.
Yeah, I'm laughing at Andrew's. Andrew was like Wayne of In Wayne's World.
That's right. Exactly. Excellent.
Oh man.
So I think it's also disrespectful. You know what's interesting? Samson's totally disrespecting that woman. Totally.
Yeah.
Looking at her as an object. And it's really a shame. I hate seeing that, because I don't think You know, women are God's daughters, you know, children of God, guys, and they're to be respected as that. You know, they should be treated like God's daughters, like your sister, right? Before they become somebody you're really interested in romantically, and vice versa, ladies. You know, guys are God's sons, and I think in the dating world that we're in right now, I don't think it's ever been more dysfunctional, because I think that has become, and those things have become the priority is, what am I going to get out of this? And if you think about even like online dating, you put out your menu, right? You're putting out the menu of who you are, and then somebody else is going through the menu to see what they want. And
nobody puts a picture of themselves, the worst hair day ever, you know,
right,
30 pounds ago. You know?
Right. Yeah, and I'm not against online dating, and I think there's a place for it, and I know people who have found their spouse through it, and so I think it can have its rightful place. But I'm just saying, kind of how it's set up. It's set up for us to look at somebody else as an object, right? And so I think we have to be really careful, especially in those situations, to say, 100%. I'm going into this to build a friendship. So my intention is, even if I'm on Match.com or whatever, my intention is to build a friendship. And I think if we started doing that, then we might not have a lot of the heartache and some of the problems that we have. When we give somebody our heart first because we want something out of a relationship, and before we know it, we're in this, and the relationship blows up, and we're devastated. You know,
one of the points I make in divorce care when I'm talking and teaching with those guys is, when you've been married in divorce, and then you get married again, the second time marriages are like twice, they're this exponentially almost. It seems like they're going to get divorced, and one of the reasons for that is they end up. That's what I tell them. I said, you know what? Do me a favor. Do something different than you did with the first marriage. You know, realign your picker. You know, if your thing was you got to have a guy with a 48-inch chest and a 28-inch waist, and that's your criteria, you're you know, that's great. But what about all the other things, right? And so it's such. I totally get it, Dave.
Totally, 100% agree with you. And I think, you know, the comments I'm seeing, true. You know, Lori says, I wish we'd go back to blind dates and friends and families fixing us up. That is, from what I've heard, and I've studied this, that is the number one way people prefer to meet somebody else, because you have somebody that's already gone to the work of knowing somebody. They know something about their character. So I think that when it comes to that kind of a friendship, the dating friendship, you really want to say, I'm working on the friendship. Make sure that word is a part of it. Yep. Like, I'm dating, but it's a friendship I'm building. And so let me, speaking of that, I'm just going to go off on a little bit of a pet peeve I've got. Okay. Can I do that, Dave? Okay. I'm getting hot now. So this is what I saw all the time, and it actually makes me mad. But quite honestly, it makes me angry. I saw, when I was in singles ministry, guys and girls, you know, getting to know each other and dating, and quote unquote, right? And when they were alone together, it seemed like a date, right? Guys paying, open the door, being super nice, maybe even holding hands. I mean, who knows? But they're going out. So Dave, this is going to be loud. You'll be able to hear this. So they're going out together, but then when they get together with a group of friends, it's like, oh, here's my friend Susie, you know, meet my friend Susie. And all of a sudden it changes, you know, there's a different dynamic in the quote friendship. Now it does seem like a dating friendship anymore. It seems like we're just friends. And usually in those kinds of mismatches, what happens is you have one person, kind of like I was talking about before, who's getting something out of that dating relationship, right? So they're in it, they're having fun, they're getting the companionship, they're getting to go out to movies, they're doing a lot of fun things together. And the other person has the hope that this is going to turn into something more. But the other person that's getting something out of it, they're looking at this person more as a placeholder. I'd love to date. I'm going to go out with you for a while. In their mind, they're telling you this, but in their mind, I'm going to go out with you for a while. But if something better comes along, man, I'm going to start. And I see it all the time, where someone comes to me and goes, I had no idea. I thought we were dating. And all of a sudden he starts dating this other woman, and we were going out every weekend, and boom, nothing, no calls, no nothing, right? That's flat out disrespectful. That's wrong.
It is.
I don't think a Christian should ever treat somebody else like that. And it takes a level of honesty, right? So if you're in that kind of a relationship, honesty and communication, you have to be honest with the other person. Like, I'm starting to have feelings for you. Do you feel the same way? Or the other person needs to say, you know what? I feel kind of like I'm using this person because I don't have those feelings for them, right? Don't lead them on. Have a conversation and let them know that, you know what, if this is too hard for you, let's kind of take our relationship back a step and kind of hang out with friends and groups, whatever. I don't want to lead you on, but I think what happens is you start getting some of the needs met you want. And so you don't want to let go of that quote dating relationship. And so you let it go on, and it's not defined, right? The DTR, it's not defined. You haven't had the conversation. And in the end, someone's really going to be hurt.
Right. And
so I would love to see more conversations about just what are we doing here, because I think that helps so much.
I've seen it with a really close friend, and I won't name her name, and she's somewhat famous of a singer. And this person this guy was nuts over, and he did everything for this other person.
Yeah.
And then when I confronted her, I said, he's really got feelings for you. She goes, oh, no, he's just friends. Until I said, hey, well, then don't use him, because that's what you're doing. I see exactly what you're doing. The good thing in this particular case, it was funny. She didn't see they were really good friends, and he wanted to be more than friends, but they ended up getting married, and it was one of the best things, you guys. And I also see this with unintentionally, and I've talked to some of you in singles about this, on guys. So they'll be going out doing all these stuff with these ladies, and one particular really close friend, I had to say, stop this, because they were going to the movies, they were doing all this stuff, and I'm going, dude, are you guys dating? And he goes, no, we're just friends. I said, does she know that? And I knew the answer, that she didn't know that. And it's so painful. Just a little bit of honesty. Guys, if you're spending all your time, or girls, you're spending all your time with a friend of the opposite sex, and it's completely just a friendship, that's great, as long as you've talked about it. But you've got to set that thing called expectations. What are your expectations? What are their expectations? Because I'm telling you, and that's the beautiful thing about singles. And I think that one of the reasons why we're there is so we can learn these things. And look, you can be friends with somebody without dating them. It's a beautiful, it works great. You can learn so much.
And you can tell if you're in the relationship by doing the phone test, Dave. So the phone test, here's the phone test, okay? If you have a friend, and when you get a text from them, hey, you want to do something Friday? You go, oh, cool, that'd be fun. You're friends. If you get a text from somebody saying, hey, let's do something Friday, and your heart starts beating a little, that's not friends. That's not the same level of friendship, all right? So the phone test, right? So just think about how you feel about somebody calling you a phone. If your heart's racing a little bit more and you're getting a little excited, that's more than a friendship. That you want something more than just hanging out together. Yeah. And so having conversations is a great way to just clear the air. And it doesn't have to be awkward. Just say, is this going somewhere? Because if this is what happens is both ways, right? Somebody's using the other person, but I'm just going to be honest. The person that's being used at some level is getting something too. that they want. And they're afraid that if they bring it up, they're going to lose the thing that they're hoping to get, right? So both people are in this, and you don't want to just say one person's the user. Somebody else is getting something out of this too. And so we just need to be honest and say, okay, this is going to be hard, but I got to have a conversation and clear the air, you know.
How many of you have actually seen this for yourself? So I bet you have, where you go, that guy's so good for her if she just knew, or that guy, you know, or vice versa. And you go, man, can't you see it? You guys are perfect together. You're friends, but their expectation, and that's what happened to that person that ended up getting married, is that she had the best friend she could ever have. Somebody put her on a pedestal and just cherished her. And at a moment's notice, he was there when she needed. I mean, I'm talking is when it was going bad with her ex and all these things. You know, he was there in a completely. This is a Christian group, Christian couple, by the way. Sometimes we don't recognize what's really good for us, and that's when, as a good friend of Dan's or whoever, if I see that, say, man, I really think you might want to check this, invest some time in this relationship, because from what it looks from me, from my point of view, this is a great thing. You know,
it is. You know what? The word dating is kind of one of those hot button topics that when people hear it, they often get angry, frustrated, defeated, whatever. Okay. I want to try and hopefully kind of take a step back from that and make it a little easier for you. A date is a type of friendship. That's all it is. It's a type of friendship. And if you're frustrated, I'll never date, I'll never find anybody, whatever, just kind of take some pressure off yourself, right? Yeah. Build friendships. You don't have to go out and find your wife or your husband. Build friendships. You know, sometimes we're so fixated on that finding the one that we're kind of missing things. You know, we're qualifying everybody that walks by, and we're missing possible friendships. So build intentionally good friendships, and with both the same sex, opposite sex, and you never know what might happen. Take some pressure off yourself. Jesus was single. Paul probably single at some point. But I've said this before, and it's true, and you need to know it. It's in 1 Corinthians chapter 7. Christianity, the only religion in the world that has a theology of singleness, and it elevates it. So in God's mind, a single is not somebody who's incomplete. In God's mind, a single is somebody who has a calling. It may not be a permanent calling, but they have a calling, and it's important. And so, you know, it's important to understand that if you're single. So you don't want to always feel like I gotta make a friendship so I can start dating so I can get married, right? It can happen, but just build the friendships. That's my 2 cents.
Somebody just put down, dating is a nightmare.
Yes. I have had Tracy Baker. I have had nightmares myself. I've got Teresa hates it when I tell stories, so I'm not going to tell stories, but I have had some of the craziest dating experiences, and I have friends that I think should write books on it. Yeah. There's some hilarious things of people driving 2 hours to a date. It was nothing like they thought, and they spend all night, you know, not all night, but, you know, hours with somebody. But I do think God cares about this. Yeah. Because, you know, I've talked to so many different singles, and I would say 95% of them, if you said to them, honestly, if somebody came into your life, God brought somebody into your life, and they seemed like the right one for you, would you want to be married? Yes. The answer is yes. What makes people not interested in doing that is just bad experiences. Lots and lots of bad experiences, right? So it taints you. And I personally think that singles want to be married is their number one felt need. You know, they may be frustrated or a lot of other things, but I think it's their number one felt need. And so that's one of the reasons why I'm writing this book, Intentional Friendship, because that's the whole goal of this, to kind of help people with their friendships and their relationships. that can potentially lead to marriage, but to avoid a lot of the pitfalls that we all fall into when we have friendships, and then when we get into dating relationships that end over and over and over and over again. So
it sounds, when this book comes out, sounds like a 4-week, a very intensive class you'll become teaching, huh?
Yes, it's a 12-chapter book, so just throwing that out there.
Great.
But it's Lost Art of Relationships is phenomenal. My good buddy Dan Crystal wrote that book. So good. So that's another great book on relationships. There's a lot of good ones out there.
Yep.
But I would just say the friendship is the key. Focus on that. And if you're focused on friendships, you may find that one of those friendships turns into more. So Lisa, yes, we're almost done with it. I'm a month away, close to a month away. So, but we're actually having, I don't know if I should say who. I have some pretty big deal editors who are going to be going through it for us, and so we're hoping it becomes something pretty big. But it's all related to the stuff that I taught and learned at Bayside, and then also, Crystal Taco has a wealth of knowledge too that she's going to be weighing in. But do you guys? Do we have time for questions, or are we done?
Let's take like a couple of questions. We got time for 2. We're right at our closing time, but who's got a question they're dying to ask? You guys have so many great comments. You guys are so uplifting with one another as well. Dating can be a nightmare.
It can be.
Definitely a bad dream.
It's interesting. I can tell you a little personal story while we're waiting for questions. I had some of those weird relationships that needed to define the conversation. I had some of them where I had the DTR and they weren't honest with me, and those ended. When I dated Teresa, we were friends first, not for a ton of time. We were in the same ministry for a few months, and then we became pretty good friends for a month before we started dating. But God kind of had to take me through a process of, do you want to date Teresa? Do you want to, step parent kids? There was a lot of questions I had to answer before I even started wanting to date Teresa. And so when I started dating Teresa, I said, hey, I'd like to date you. I'd like to have a dating relationship with you. And we talked about boundaries and things like that. So that doesn't sound very romantic, but that's what we did. It worked out really good because she knew exactly where I was coming from, and she knew what to expect. And it took a lot of pressure off for both of us, right? Didn't have to figure it out ourselves. So Tracy says, how do you handle a friendship that was once a relationship? So I would assume what you mean is like a dating relationship. So here's what I need to say about this, and you may not like it. I taught this at a singles event one time, and a lady 2 years later told me, I was mad at you for 2 years for saying this, but it's true. So I'm going to give you the hard truth. What can happen in a dating relationship when the couple separates, and if it was physical, it's even more true, right? So if there was a couple that were dating, they bonded at some level. If there was physicality in it, then they're very strongly bonded together. And I know that Barb Wilson talks about that. So when you break up with somebody that you've been dating, if you're around them, if you keep, if one doesn't want to be in the relationship, the other one does, there's the potential that those feelings keep getting reignited. And they've actually done studies where they've taken the person that broke up with, and they've put him, a EKG or whatever it is, the brain scan, EEG, and they've monitored how their brain works, and they've showed a picture of their ex. And when they did, the brain acted just like somebody who's a drug addict needing a drug, right? The bonding that God has put in all of us because we're created in His image and He wants us to be in a relationship is very strong. It's very, very strong. You might need to take some time away from this person. I recommend, like, if there is that dynamic going on, 6 months, no contact. Like if it's too hard, just stay away. You got to get them out of your system. You've got to heal. Doesn't mean you won't ever be friends again, but it just means one of the persons in that relationship needs some space and time. And so give yourself 6 months. And then if they're running the same circles as you, maybe you can start, talking to them again. But you kind of have to monitor how that's going in your life, I think.
Yeah, I think that's just great advice. I think that God tells us to guard our heart, and that's a good way of doing that. Because it's
Right.
painful, and I've seen it a lot. Where the one person's calling, can we just be friends? And it's like, man, I'm broken up, man. I'm hurting. Give me a second.
Yeah, and there's often a guilt that the person who broke up feels, and so they feel like, oh well, I don't want to just dump them cold turkey or whatever. And actually, if you break up with somebody, you're actually doing them a favor and showing them some love by giving them some space and letting them heal.
Yeah.
So, So Olivia says a good reason not to date people you work with. That's true. I mean, that can be super hard if you break up with somebody. Let's see what we had another really good one in there.
Let's see one.
At what time in a dating? Okay, hang on. How long you should be opposite gender friends before you consider discussing dating them? You have to get my book for that. No, I'm kidding. But seriously, I do recommend getting to know them. We have a section called Intentional Friendship, and it gives you questions to ask and some ideas on how to really get to know somebody. And then at some point, you kind of have your questions answered. I think the problem is too often people who are dating opposite gender friends, they're really letting their feelings be the guide, right? So their connection and that strong emotional connection they feel, they're letting that be the guide rather than do you really know them? So we have a whole section in the book that has some pretty detailed questions. I'm not saying you go with a list like you're an inspector or you're a detective, but you might want to find out about their background, some of their past relationships, their financial status, how they feel about kids, where they stand politically. Are they super strong about it? Where they like to vacation? Do they not like to vacation? There's so many questions that you may not have asked that when you get into a marriage, they're big deals, So I think it has to do with just being smart and taking time and really getting to know somebody. And then at some point you'll know, they're the one.
Yep. When it's a tough thing. There's a lot of different ways to look at it. And I think, I don't know that I agree that dating is a friendship, because I think usually when somebody's invested, and this is what I told my kids. My kids have had 2 boyfriends in their life, and they're both engaged to their second one. It just wasn't a sport to them, It was like their thing was, finding somebody that they're going to spend the rest of their life with. And I think there's some wisdom in that as well. And listen, I dated a bunch of folks, but I just know that as a dad, watching your daughter, go through a breakup, like they've only done it each of them once, So,
yeah.
But it's painful, man. And you know what I mean?
It's interesting. I guess I would disagree a little with you. I think dating, if marriage is a friendship, and it for sure is, I think dating also is, right? And now you may just jump into a dating relationship and start building the friendship in the context of dating.
Right.
I think there's a lot of problems with that, just because you set yourself up for feeling connected, and then ending the friendship and the dating relationship. That happens. People do that all the time, and it works, but I'm just saying you have to think about it, right? You got to be intentional. So if you're really going to give your heart to somebody and you don't know them, you're potentially going to get hurt.
Yeah.
Why not?
I guess that's what I mean by that. It's like I see it all the time, that there's people that have to be dating somebody, and they never give themselves a chance to have just friendships. And I think obviously we've said for years that a great date starts with a great friendship, right? And we believe in that. But I think that you just have to be careful. And if you're going from one relationship to another, dating relationship to another, I mean, I think that you may just pump the brakes a little bit and say, hey, what's going on here?
For sure. And I did that, right? So at some point, I was dating kind of ending one, starting another. And I think Teresa was probably the most intentional dating relationship I had.
And look how it turned
and we
out.
started with friendship. So yeah, it worked out good.
What was the last one, Rich, you just put up?
At what time dating relationship do you know it's getting serious? Oh, we kind of answered that one earlier.
Yeah.
When you really have answered those questions and you truly know the person, it's not just about how you feel, but you say, not only do I feel this way, but I really know them. And you've kind of looked at flags, if there's red or yellow or, so, it's kind of interesting. When Teresa and I were dating, we had some flags, right, between each other.
Yeah.
And so those became conversations we had. And at some point, we resolved in our minds that, okay, those aren't red flags. Those are yellow or, those are not something that needs to stop us.
Yeah, we're going to have to be intentional about that flag.
For sure. I was going to say something earlier when we were talking about this, dating and marriage. Oh, yes. It's really interesting in Western culture versus Eastern culture. So Western culture, you have love-based marriages. So you find somebody, you fall in love and get married. Eastern culture, you have arranged marriages. And in Eastern culture, you truly do become friends after you get married, right? Or you become friends after you know who you're going to marry. And so if you think about it, you would think that love-based marriages would definitely be better, would definitely be more fulfilling and more successful, but it's just the opposite. And Eastern marriages, they've done studies like in India, places like that. Not all places, right? There's certain places where, women are treated like cattle or whatever, and it's horrible. But in India, they actually, for the most part, they care about their daughter and their son, and they're trying to find somebody good for them, right? So they do studies, and they found that by and large, the marriages are more fulfilling. People express a higher level of satisfaction and happiness in Eastern marriages. I didn't believe it at first. I looked at a lot of different studies, and it was like, oh my gosh, it's true. And I think it has a lot to do with the fact that in an Eastern marriage, you're going to get married whether you like it or not. You might as well build a friendship, right?
All right.
So they do. Their families are friends and they're connected, so they build a friendship. Whereas in love-based marriages, we're in love. Well, we're not friends. We'll find out after we're married if we're friends, So it's kind of an interesting dynamic.
What a great night, man. Boy, I'm looking at the time and it's almost 8:45. But so we went a little bit over. Imagine that, you and I together talking a little too much.
Never happened.
Never happened. You guys, thank you so much. Hey, do us a favor. I don't know if you're aware of this, but these meetings, these nights are being viewed like 12, 13, 1,400 times by the time we get to the next week. But do us a favor, share this if you find this helpful with your friends. I know there's folks that may not know about us and are single and feeling alone, and it's just a great thing to be able to process what they're going through. So get this in front of as many people as you can. And it's not for a look what we're doing or anything like that. It's because we really want people in the greater singles community, not just Bayside, to just feel like there's a community that they could actually be a part of, and that we can help them get through some things. You guys are phenomenal.
Yeah.
Dan Houk, I love you. You are just an amazing guy.
I love you too, Dave.
There's your affirmation sandwich.
Well, thank you.
But
we're good friends, in case you couldn't tell.
We are. But what a great night, you guys. And listen, I know God has something great in store for you.
Yeah.
And I know we're all feeling we're wearing this COVID thing. I mean, it's like I said, it's closing in around all of us. Our before a month ago, I didn't know anybody. Now I know, 6, 8 people, know them. And it's not just an acquaintance or I know somebody. So So I know these are tough times, but I know we can get through this together. And I know God's got a great plan. Dan, would you please close us in prayer, please?
Yeah, absolutely. Heavenly Father, God, we love you, and we know that you are the originator of all relationships. You are the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, and you've been in a relationship for all eternity. And Jesus came into the world to reveal who you are to us. And what a privilege it is to get to know you. And Lord, I just pray for those tonight who joined us who may not know you. I just pray, God, that they would find you tonight, that they would enter into a relationship with you, but just inviting you into their lives. And Lord, for so many others who have struggled with friendships, I know I have, or dating relationships, God, I pray you'd just heal them, give them joy, give them confidence that you are for them, that you have a plan for them, and you're not done. You're not done with any of us. And so, God, I just pray you would use this community just to bond us together and to use us in the lives of others around us too, God, that you've called us to reach. And so, God, we give ourselves to you. We would just ask that you would use us. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you so much, Dan. And thank you, everybody, for joining tonight. Listen, share this, get it in the hands of your friends and your colleagues. And we love you so much. We will see you next week back here.
See you guys. Thanks.
With the 3Ds. And
That's right.
we love you. Have a great week.